Hitch band, N5VDO1. VO fan 1. The carriage door slammed shut while my hand was still reaching for the iron gate. Blackthorn's towers rose beyond the bars, their narrow windows burning gold against the night, close enough to promise warmth and too far away to give it. Behind me, wheels ground over packed snow. "Wait," I called. The escort captain did not turn. 6 riders vanished into the white dark, taking the lanterns with them and leaving me beneath the blue flame of a single gate torch. Its smoke smelled of pine resin. My wedding slippers sank ankle-deep into the drift. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now, back to Alara. I tightened my fingers around the silver marriage token at my throat. 3 hours earlier, I had stood before a moon priest and spoken vows to an empty place where King Kale should have been. A marriage by proxy, they called it. Necessary for the alliance. Binding all the same. Yet when I pulled the bell rope beside the gate, its iron voice rolled through the walls, and no one welcomed Blackthorn's new bride. A viewing slit scraped open. An old man's eyes appeared behind it. "State your name." "Alara." My teeth struck together around the word. "Wife of King Kale." The slit closed. Bolts shifted beyond the gate, and for one breath I thought I heard them being drawn back. Then silence returned. Snow collected on my veil. At last, a smaller door opened no wider than a hand, and the steward stepped into the torchlight wearing a fur-lined coat. Warm air slipped out behind him, carrying beeswax, roasted meat, and cedar smoke. My body leaned toward it before pride held me still. He unfolded a sealed order. His Majesty commands that the foreign bride remain beyond the threshold until he grants her entry at dawn. Then let me speak to him. The steward's gaze dropped to my thin, ceremonial cloak. The king is not receiving anyone. Does he know I am here? His thumb covered part of the black wax seal. The order bears the royal mark. That was not an answer. A gust tore the veil from my hair and snapped it against the stone. I caught it before it disappeared through the bars. Send word to him. The command is explicit. The steward retreated. Blackthorn law forbids me to open these gates. And Blackthorn law allows a bride to freeze outside them. His jaw tightened, but the door closed. The locks fell into place one by one. I struck the gate with my palm. "Kale." Only the storm answered, hissing over iron spikes. What I could not know was that the man whose name I called stood 20 miles north, riding the border beneath a moonless sky. No messenger had reached him. No royal command had left his hand. Inside the gatehouse, the steward placed the order beside a lamp and avoided looking at the seal again. Outside, I wrapped my veil around my bare hands and lowered myself against the wall. The stone pulled heat through my dress. Snow erased the carriage tracks, then covered the hem of my wedding gown. Somewhere behind Blackthorn's walls, a watch bell marked midnight. Then another sound rose beneath it, faint, broken, and terribly alive. A young wolf was crying under the snow. VO fan 2. A thin cry trembled beneath the wind, vanished, then came again from somewhere below the iron gate. Alara raised her head. Snow clung to her lashes, blurring the torchlight behind the wall into pale orange halos. "Where are you?" The answer was a muffled whimper, followed by claws scraping stone. She pressed one numb palm to the wall and followed the sound toward a drainage arch half buried beneath a white drift. Black water moved under its iron grate, carrying splinters of ice that clicked together like small teeth. Wedged beyond the bars, a wolf pup fought to keep its muzzle above the current. Its dark fur had frozen into spikes. Each attempt to climb sent it sliding back into the water. Alara looked toward the gatehouse. Light glowed behind its narrow windows, close enough to see, too far to warm her. If she shouted now, perhaps someone would finally come. Perhaps the strength left in her lungs could purchase her own survival. The pup slipped lower. Alara dropped to her knees. "No," she whispered. "You don't disappear while they pretend not to hear." The ceremonial cloak beneath her was already stiff with frost, and her fingers barely obeyed her. She pulled at the silver pins holding her wedding veil until one tore free. The gauzy fabric lifted in the gale, snapping against her cheek before she wound one end around her wrist and pushed the rest through the grate. "Bite it." The pup pawed weakly at the floating cloth. "Come on, take hold." Another rush of freezing runoff struck its side. Its muzzle vanished. Alara thrust her bare arm between the bars. Ice scraped her skin, and the cold seized her so violently that her teeth struck together. Her fingertips found wet fur. She caught the pup beneath one foreleg, but the grate bit into her shoulder and stopped her from pulling it through. The opening was too narrow. With her free hand, she dug at the packed snow around the lowest bar. Her nails split against frozen gravel. She kept digging. Wind dragged loose strands of hair across her mouth, and every breath tasted of iron. At last, a stone shifted beneath the grate. Alara tore it free, widening the gap by inches. Now, she pulled as the pup kicked. Wet fur scraped over stone, then the small body spilled into her lap, shivering so hard its paws drummed against her gown. Alara wrapped the wedding veil around it, folding the embroidered edges over its ears. The cloth meant to announce a royal bride became a shelter for a nameless creature no one else had heard. The pup pushed its nose beneath her chin. Its breath was faint but warm. "Keep that," she murmured. "I have the cloak." It was not true. The cloak no longer held warmth, and lifting the pup had taken what little strength remained in her arms. Still, she tucked it against her chest and crawled back beneath the shallow shelter of the wall. Its heartbeat fluttered against the silver marriage token at her throat. One pulse, then another. Alara matched her breathing to it while snow gathered over them both. Before her eyes closed, the pup raised its head toward the northern road. A distant howl rolled through the storm. This time, something powerful answered from beyond the trees. VO Fan 3. Hoofbeats shattered the last hour of darkness. Through curtains of snow, black horses surged from the northern road, their bridles crusted white and their breath rolling like smoke. Kale rode at their head, carrying the bitter scent of pine, leather, and the border wind on his cloak. Blackthorn's gate should have opened at the first sound of his horn. It did not. Then another scent reached him. Omega blood, fresh enough to cut through iron, wet stone, and falling snow. Kale pulled his stallion to a violent stop, his gaze fixed on the untouched gate. "Open it." The steward's voice came faintly from the other side. "Your Majesty, tradition forbids the gate from being unsealed before dawn." Kale swung down into snow nearly to his knees. Pale morning light caught the frost in his dark hair, but his eyes had already shifted to molten gold. "There is someone outside." Chains rattled behind the oak. They did not lift. The royal order commanded. "I gave no order." The words struck harder than the wind. Kale seized the frozen crossbar built into the outer gate. Old law reserved it for ceremonial entry. No king had touched it in generations. Ice split beneath his gloves as he hauled. From within came the steward's startled protest, followed by the groan of timber resisting iron. Kale pulled again. A hinge cracked. The chain tore loose from its bracket, and the gate lurched inward beneath his strength. Bells began ringing across the courtyard, not the measured chime of dawn, but the harsh alarm reserved for a breach. Servants emerged under torchlight. Guards reached for weapons, then froze when their king stepped through the broken threshold from the wrong side. Kale ignored them. The blood scent led along the wall, faint drops buried beneath fresh powder. 30 feet from the gate, he found a strip of ivory cloth trapped against an iron grate. Wedding embroidery. His breath stopped. Beneath the shallow shelter of the stone wall lay a woman almost hidden by snow. Her lashes were white with frost. Her lips had lost their color, and one bare hand rested on a soaked veil gathered tightly against her chest. Something moved inside it. A wolf pup lifted its head and gave a weak, rasping whine. Kale dropped to one knee. The silver marriage token at the woman's throat bore Blackthorn's crest, pressed against skin cold enough to terrify him. His bride. The woman he had sworn to receive with honor had been left within sight of his walls. Alara. Her name left him like an oath. No answer came. He pressed 2 fingers beneath her jaw. One heartbeat touched them, slow, fragile, still there. When Kale tried to lift the pup away, Alara's frozen arms tightened by instinct. Even unconscious, she guarded it. The rescued animal carried her warmth while her torn fingertips marked the snow red. Kale slid one arm beneath both of them and another beneath her knees. "Bring the healer," he ordered. The steward stood in the shattered gateway, holding a parchment sealed in black wax. "Your Majesty, we believed." Kale rose with Alara against his chest. The pup remained wrapped in her wedding veil between them. Behind him, the ruined gate hung open before the gathering household, and the ancient law that had kept her outside lay broken at his feet. His gaze settled on the parchment. Then someone wanted my queen dead. VO, Fan 4. Torchlight spilled across the grand hall as the bronze doors slammed against the stone. Meltwater dripped from Kale's boots, each step leaving a dark mark on the black marble. Alara lay motionless in his arms, her skin pale against the wolf pup tucked inside her damp wedding veil. At the sight of them, conversation died. Nobles stood beneath silver banners, summoned by the shattered gate alarm. Their silk robes whispered as they turned, while the hall smelled of pine smoke, wet fur, and winter carried in on Kale's cloak. "Clear the hearth," he ordered. Servants rushed to obey, but a gray-haired elder stepped into his path. "The threshold rite has not been completed, Your Majesty. The foreign bride cannot enter the royal wing." Kale did not slow. "She crossed the threshold when I carried her over it." The elder's staff struck the marble. "Not as queen." That stopped him. Alara's breathing brushed faintly against Kale's throat. Between them, the pup gave a thin whimper, and her injured fingers tightened around the veil as if the cold still had teeth. Kale looked from her frozen hands to the watching court. Then he shifted her weight against his chest and tore the clasp from his own shoulders. The royal cloak fell around Alara in a sweep of midnight wool and silver embroidery. Its crown-shaped clasp rested above her heart. Several nobles inhaled sharply. Only a crown ruler or one under the ruler's personal protection could wear it. "Now," Kale said, "she enters as both." The elder lowered his voice. "You place the authority of Blackthorn around a woman no one here has heard speak. I place warmth around a dying woman." Kale carried her to the fire, where the healer spread thick furs beside the flames. Heat rolled over them, sharp with cedar resin. When Kale knelt, Alara's arms refused to release the pup. The healer touched her wrist, then glanced up. Her pulse is strengthening, but slowly. "I need heated stones, dry linen, and space." Kale rose and turned. The court stepped back, all except 3 elders. "Convenient," one murmured. His jeweled rings clicked against his ceremonial cup. "A foreign Omega arrives unseen, remains outside until the king returns, and is discovered clutching a helpless child beneath the royal wall." Another elder studied Alara's bloodstained veil, a picture designed to soften even an alpha king. The accusation moved through the hall in low whispers. Staged. Calculated. A bride seeking sympathy because rank could not command respect. Kale's jaw hardened, but before he could answer, the wolf pup stirred beneath the cloak and pressed closer to Alara's chest. Her numb hand moved over its head, not toward the crown clasp, not toward the king, toward the life she had saved. The healer looked up from Alara's torn fingertips. These wounds came from pulling against stone and ice. Whatever happened outside, she spent her remaining strength on the pup. Silence held for one breath. Then the gray-haired elder raised his staff again. "Mercy can be performed, Your Majesty. Until the bride wakes and answers before this court, we cannot know whether Blackthorn has received a queen or welcomed a deceiver." Kale stepped between the elders and the furs. Firelight burned along the silver wolf embroidered across his back. "She will answer when she chooses," he said. "And the next person who accuses her, while she cannot speak, will answer to me." The elders bowed, but none withdrew the charge. Around Alara's shoulders, the royal cloak gave her protection. Around her name, the court had already drawn a blade. VO, Fan 5. The wedding ring struck the stone floor with a clear, silver note. Fire hissed in the hearth, filling the chamber with cedar smoke and restless amber light. Beneath Kale's royal cloak, Alara sat upright against the carved headboard, her face colorless, her bandaged fingers trembling from the effort. The wolf pup stirred beside her, still wrapped in the damp wedding veil. Kale stood within arm's reach, but he did not retrieve the ring. Neither did the gray-haired elder waiting near the door. "If this marriage is a sentence," Alara said, her voice scraped thin by cold, "I will not serve it." The healer moved to ease her back onto the pillows. Alara raised one wrapped hand. The gesture was small. It stopped everyone. "You were brought here under treaty," the elder said. His staff tapped once against the floor. "Leaving would insult Blackthorn and your own people. Then both kingdoms may be insulted." Alara swung her feet down. The flagstones chilled her bare soles, and the room tilted sharply enough to blur the candles. Kale reached for her, then halted when her palm turned toward him. He obeyed the boundary. That, more than any command, steadied her. I did not cross 200 miles to beg strangers to call me queen, she continued. And I will not wear a crown in a house that requires my silence as payment for shelter. Kale's jaw tightened. No one here has the right to silence you. Then let me speak where they can hear. Moments later, the chamber doors opened onto the grand hall. Conversation died beneath the crackle of the central hearth. Alara entered slowly, wrapped in Kale's black cloak, while the healer carried the pup behind her. Every step dragged heat from her body, yet she stopped before the assembled council without leaning on the king. The gray-haired elder's gaze dropped to her empty finger. Do you reject the marriage? I reject being condemned inside it. Alara pointed toward the black-sealed order lying on the council table. Bring that to me. A servant obeyed. The parchment felt stiff beneath her bandages, its edge rough with dried wax. Alara held it near a candle until the false seal gleamed. My father's court received Blackthorn documents throughout the negotiations. Your royal mark carries 7 thorns around the wolf's crown. Her fingertip hovered over the impression. This has 6. A murmur moved through the hall. She turned the parchment toward Kale. The wax is black, but the seal is not yours. Kale examined it without touching her hand. His eyes shifted from the missing thorn to the steward, then to the elders. Who delivered this order? No one answered. The silence was no longer aimed at Alara. It pressed outward, searching for someone else. She bent, retrieved the ring from the cold floor, and placed it on the council table rather than on her finger. Prove that your threshold is guarded by law, not cruelty, she told Kale. Find who used your name to leave me there. Then I will decide whether this ring is a bond or a chain. The king faced his court as the forged order smoldered beside the candle flame. Seal every gate, he commanded. No one leaves Blackthorn. This time, the walls closed around the accused. Not the bride. VO Fan 6. Cold blue light pressed through the high windows as iron bolts thundered into place across Blackthorn's gates. Kale stood before the council table, the forged order smoldering beside Alara's wedding ring, while the hall filled with the bitter scent of wax and wet wool. Until the traitor is found, this council is suspended. The gray-haired elder rose so sharply that his carved chair scraped the stone. You cannot dissolve the body that keeps your crown lawful. I can stop it from silencing the woman my laws nearly killed. Kale removed the black signet of council authority from his wrist and set it beside the ring. The sound was softer than steel, but every elder flinched. No decree could pass. No sentence could be issued. Kale had frozen his own government to preserve Alara's right to speak. The gray-haired elder's gaze moved toward her, pale beneath the royal cloak, yet standing without the healer's arm. 3 border houses pledged their wolves on the council's authority, he warned. Suspend us now, and they will withdraw before the northern armies move. Kale descended from the dais. Rather than speak over Alara, he stopped beside her, leaving a careful span of cold air between them. Then they may withdraw knowing why. He faced the gathered nobles. Fire snapped in the braziers, casting 7 thorn shadows across the walls. The forged seal belongs to a traitor. But the command succeeded because my household obeyed ritual without mercy. That failure is mine. A low growl rolled through the chamber. One lord tore the silver clasp from his shoulder and dropped it onto the council table. A second followed, then a third. 3 emblems struck the oak in hard succession. House Vale withdraws its riders. House Morcant withdraws its grain. House Rhyme withdraws its oath. Beyond the windows, horns answered from the courtyards. Hooves churned slush below as messengers prepared to leave, and the warm hall suddenly carried the raw scent of snow through its opening doors. Blackthorn had lost soldiers, provisions, and political cover in less than a minute. Kale did not reach for the emblems. Your support was purchased with an Omega's silence, he said. Keep it. Alara's fingers tightened beneath the cloak. The fur at its collar still held his warmth, but the ring remained on the table between the false order and the abandoned crests. Do not turn me into an excuse for losing your kingdom, she said quietly. Kale looked at her then, not as a king measuring an alliance, but as the man who had found her heartbeat failing beneath his wall. You are not the excuse. You are the line I should never have allowed Blackthorn to cross. The gray-haired elder struck his staff against the floor. Scouts reported enemy movement 30 miles north. Without those 3 houses, the border may fall before tomorrow night. Silence closed around Kale. This was no ceremonial cost that could be reversed with an apology. He had surrendered the strength that guarded his throne. Alara stepped to the council table and placed her palm beside the ring, claiming space without putting it back on. Then stop asking whether I deserve to enter this kingdom, she said. Ask whether this kingdom deserves to survive what it permitted. Kale turned to the steward. Open the armory to every loyal house. Send riders north under my personal banner. Until this court can distinguish duty from cruelty, it will not govern in my name. The doors boomed shut behind the departing lords. Then a single war horn sounded from the northern tower, one long note, followed by 2 short ones. The gray-haired elder's face lost its color. Enemy forces had crossed the outer boundary. By sunrise, Kale would have to defend Blackthorn with 3 great houses missing, and with the woman he had chosen to hear standing at the center of a court that now blamed her for the price. VO, Fan 7. A thin, frightened whine slipped beneath the northern war horn. The healer hurried into the grand hall with the rescued wolf pup cradled against her chest, its damp fur carrying the sour chill of the drainage tunnel. Alara's wedding veil still wrapped its small body, the silver embroidery dark with melted snow. At the foot of the council table, the pup twisted free. Its paws struck the stone, and it ran, not toward Alara, but toward the commander of the royal guard. The commander dropped to one knee. A bronze crescent tag lay hidden beneath the pup's matted fur. His hands shook as he touched it. My son, he breathed. The hall went still except for the hiss of resin in the braziers. Kale moved beside Alara, close enough that the warmth of his shoulder reached her, but he did not speak for her. Alara crouched despite the healer's warning and loosened the veil from the pup's body. Someone put him in that drain, she said. The same night someone ordered the gate kept shut. The commander lifted his son and pressed his face into the pup's neck. When he looked up, the softness had vanished from his eyes. He disappeared from the west courtyard before sunset. Lady Seraphine told us enemy scouts had taken him. A chair scraped sharply across the floor. Lady Seraphine stood near the gray-haired elder, one jeweled hand gripping the table's edge. A terrified animal proves nothing. Then let him choose, Alara replied. She placed the wedding veil on the cold stone between them. The cloth had preserved more than warmth. Beneath wet wool, smoke, and frozen water lingered the heavy perfume of white nightshade, sweet at first, bitter underneath. Seraphine wore the same scent. The pup flattened its ears when she approached. A low cry caught in its throat, and it buried its muzzle beneath its father's arm. The commander's gaze shifted from the veil to Seraphine's silver gloves. One fingertip was snagged, leaving a thread caught in the embroidery. Alara lifted the torn strand without touching her. You carried him to the drain, she said. You needed the court searching beyond the walls while the false order killed me at the gate. Kale's voice cut through the chamber. Why? The gray-haired elder answered first. Because her death would break the marriage alliance. Every face turned toward him. His jaw tightened as if the words had escaped before he could cage them. Seraphine stepped away, but the royal guards closed the circle. Blackthorn would blame Alara's homeland, Alara said, fitting the pieces together aloud. The border would burn, the alliance would collapse, and the 3 houses withdrawing from Kale would call it proof that his marriage had weakened the throne. Seraphine's perfume sharpened in the heated air. You were supposed to be found at dawn, she whispered. Cold, silent, and useful. Kale's hand closed around the back of a chair until the oak creaked. Alara rose before he could cross the distance. Her knees trembled, yet her voice did not. I am not your evidence, and that child is not your weapon. The commander drew his sword and laid it at Kale's feet, formally transferring the guard's loyalty from the compromised council to the crown. Around him, other guards followed. Steel touched stone in a rolling metallic chorus. Seraphine's expression changed, not to defeat, but calculation. From beyond the sealed doors came the sudden clash of boots and the snap of crossbow locks. The hall's inner guards turned too late. Seraphine smiled at Kale across the veil that had preserved her scent. You found the truth, she said. Now choose how much of your kingdom you are willing to lose for your bride. The bronze doors burst inward, and armed rebels poured into the hall beneath the banners of the 3 absent houses. VO, Fan 8. Crossbow strings snapped through the torchlit hall. Bolts struck oak pillars and shattered silver goblets, scattering sparks and wine across the cold stone. The armed rebels spread beneath the banners of the three absent houses, their wet leather carrying the sharp smell of snow and steel. "Renounce the marriage," Seraphine called, "and they will still recognize you as king." Kale moved in front of Alara, but Seraphine's hand closed around the wolf pup's scruff before the commander could reach him. The little wolf cried out, paws scraping against the council table. Alara saw the rebel nearest Seraphine watching Kale instead of her. She tore the preserved veil from her shoulders and flung it across a smoking brazier. White silk billowed through the firelight, releasing the bitter scent of nightshade into the hall. The pup twisted toward the familiar odor. Seraphine recoiled. Alara did not. She slipped beneath the rebel's raised arm, seized the child against her chest, and rolled behind the overturned table as a bolt split the chair where she had stood. Her healing lungs burned. The commander crossed the distance and pulled his son behind the royal guard's shields. "Now," Alara gasped. The guards locked ranks around the pup, removing Seraphine's last living witness from her reach. Kale drew his sword. A rebel captain lifted a sealed parchment. "By the ancient immunity of Blackthorn, no crowned king may fight in a dispute between sworn houses. Raise that blade, and you surrender the crown's protection." Silence pressed against the hall, broken only by the hiss of Alara's veil scorching over the coals. Kale removed the black gold clasp from his cloak, the emblem that placed his body above challenge, and set it on the bloodless edge of the council table. "Then I surrender it." The gray-haired elder staggered back. "Without immunity, any house may demand your trial. Even if you survive tonight, they can strip the throne from you." Kale stepped beside Alara rather than ahead of her. His shoulder touched hers, warm against the chill leaking through the broken doors. A throne that survives by sacrificing the innocent is already empty. Seraphine ordered the rebels forward. Kale met the first sword with a ringing strike, turning it aside as Alara dragged a fallen shield across the floor and slammed it into another rebel's path. The man stumbled. A royal guard disarmed him. Kale could have retreated behind the loyal line. Instead, he stayed where Alara could see him, crownless beneath the flying sparks. She caught his wrist between clashes. "You may lose, Blackthorn." His gaze dropped to the wedding ring she had not yet reclaimed from the council table. "Then let Blackthorn decide whether it deserves us." Together they advanced. The commander ordered the royal guards to close the eastern doors, dividing the rebel force. Servants pulled the wounded to safety while Kale and Alara drove Seraphine back toward the throne steps. One by one, rebel weapons struck the floor. But from the courtyard came a deeper sound, the groan of the outer gate, chains being hauled upward. A horn answered from beyond the walls. Not Blackthorn's. Seraphine's smile returned as freezing wind swept through the hall. "You chose each other," she whispered. "Now see who enters to collect your kingdom." Kale tightened his hand around Alara's. The throne stood behind them. The opening gates waited ahead. Neither turned back. VO, Fan 9. Beyond the rising gate, silver banners emerged through the snow, their fabric cracking in the wind above hundreds of mounted wolves. No charge followed. Only the measured thunder of hooves stopping outside Blackthorn's threshold. Alara recognized the crescent woven across the foremost banner, the emblem of her homeland, summoned by the forged message claiming Blackthorn had murdered its new bride. Their commander lowered his spear. "Show us Lady Alara alive, or this alliance ends before sunrise." Kale could have ordered the gate dropped. Instead, he released Alara's hand and stepped aside, giving her the choice no one had offered her on the night she arrived. Cold air poured over the blood-stained stones as she walked forward. Her torn wedding veil trailed from one fist. The wolf pup padded beside her until the commander of the royal guard gathered his son into his arms. Behind them, royal guards bound Seraphine and the gray-haired elder while the remaining rebels surrendered their blades. At the open gate, torchlight caught the bruises around Alara's wrists and the frost scars whitening her fingers. An angry murmur moved through the foreign ranks. "Blackthorn left you to die," their commander said. "Come home. We will answer this insult." Alara looked back. Kale stood without his crown's protective emblem, his sword lowered, the throne behind him, and no shield of law between himself and judgment. "The order was forged," she said. Her voice carried through the iron arch, but the cruelty it commanded found willing hands. I will not hide that. Snow hissed against the torches. Then why remain? She crossed to the council table and reclaimed her wedding ring. The metal was cold against her palm. I will not remain as tribute, and I will not enter as a prisoner. Turning toward the assembled servants, guards, elders, and riders, she held the ring where everyone could see it. If I cross this threshold again, Blackthorn's gates will never close against a helpless person in the name of rank, ritual, or royal command. Cale approached, but stopped 1 pace away. Not even my command, he said. With his own hands, he tore the false decree from the gate ledger and fed it to a brazier. Wax curled. The forged seal blackened, filling the archway with the bitter smell of smoke. Then he ordered the doors chained open until every wounded servant and surrendered soldier had been given shelter. The foreign commander lowered his spear first. One by one, the Silver Riders followed. No invasion came, only witnesses. By noon, Seraphine and her accomplice had been stripped of authority and placed before a lawful tribunal. Houses Vale, Morkant, and Rhyme, exposed as allies of her rebellion, lost their claim to Blackthorn's protection. Their riders returned before nightfall and yielded rather than face both kingdoms united. The northern enemy, finding the alliance unbroken, withdrew beyond the boundary. At dusk, Elara returned to the gate. Snow lay blue beneath the lanterns, but braziers now burned along the walls, and the Blackthorn servants stood ready with blankets and warm broth for every traveler. Cale waited outside the arch, wearing neither crown nor cloak. Elara slid the ring onto her finger herself. This time, she whispered, I choose the bond. Cale offered his hand rather than lifting her. She took it, crossed beside him, and together they closed the distance that cruelty had once made impossible. The first time Cale carried his bride through Blackthorn's gate, he saved her life. The last time they crossed it, they chose the life they would build together. Essie, they left the new bride freezing in the snow all night, until the Alpha King carried her inside follows Elara, a foreign Omega abandoned outside Blackthorn's gates by a forged royal order. Near death, she uses her last strength to rescue a trapped wolf pup, never knowing her kindness will expose a deadly conspiracy. When Alpha King Cale finds his bride unconscious in the snow, he breaks sacred law and carries her before his court. But saving Elara threatens his throne, awakens rebellion, and forces them both to choose between power and compassion. A cinematic werewolf romance about justice, courage, destiny, and love freely chosen. TA. Character 1. Elara, a 24-year-old foreign Omega bride. Front-facing view. Pale, warm skin. Slender, resilient build. Long, dark brown hair. Expressive gray eyes. Frostbitten lips. Snow-damp, ivory medieval wedding gown and torn veil. Cinematic werewolf fantasy realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. TA. Character 2. Cale, a 32-year-old male Alpha King. Front-facing view, bronze skin, tall muscular build, shoulder-length raven black hair, piercing amber eyes, angular features, a scar across his left brow, black fur-lined royal armor, and crimson cloak. Cinematic werewolf fantasy realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration.